This session is called Teen Drama, Adolescents and Parenting. The teens are not very happy with the title. So maybe the discussion is going to debunk that. So we're very lucky to have with us Dr. Ajit Bide, who is a psychiatrist. We have two students whose one name we've got wrong. Our apologies, because we just knew the mother more than the father, I suppose. Sachit Anand, who is a student of class 11, and we have Arya, who is a student of class 10th. And to moderate this session, we have Vikram Bhatt, who's the director of Bangalore International Center. A little bit about the session. Adolescence is marked by rapid physical, emotional, and social changes. Teenagers begin to develop their identities, exploring personal values and beliefs. And this period often brings heightened emotions and the quest for independence. This panel will hear from teens themselves with insights from a counselor on the deeper ways in which parents and children can connect. We're now really interested about what this session's going to be. So without much ado, I request all the panelists to kindly come on stage for an interesting hour of discussion. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. And let's get straight into it. Based on our young people's protest, we're going to rename this as adult drama and bring it to some parity. But I want to start us off very quickly. I know for Dr. Bide and myself, it's been a long time ago. But I want us to recount an instance of drama that we did as teenagers, and then and find a way to tell people here. So I'll start. I am the elder of two siblings. I have a younger sister, and I was the people pleaser of our pair, and my sister, so to speak, brought the drama. And my complaint always used to be that my parents are partial to her. So one day after one of my sister and my many fights, I decided to run away from home. And I walked out and I just stomped out. I said, "Y'all always do this." And I walked out. And I must have been 13 or something. And you get to as far as you've played in your area. And then you walk out of that area and you're suddenly like, okay, this doesn't look familiar. And even retracing is not that easy if you're in a what you call disturbed state of mind. So then I had actually sheepishly had to ask someone. I knew the building where I stayed, and he had to bring me back. And much like my personality, it ended very sheepishly, and that was the extent of my drama. And at least for a week, the partiality stopped, I want to say. But Sachit, maybe you can go next. What's you must be easy for you to remember. It must have happened like 15 minutes ago. So any instance of teen drama you want to share with us, or drama with adults?
Okay. So I wouldn't say I have a very dramatic life as a whole, but since it's 11th now and 10th boards are finally over, a lot of newer students are joining our school. And one guy, he joined school, he's a new student. And so he did something in his old school. I'm not going to say what because anonymity. Did I say that right?
That's right.
Okay. So, and he's been having a hard time because people are picking on him for it and whatnot. So, he's having a hard time fitting in. It's interesting to see, I guess.
Arya, you want to go next?
So, contrary to Sachit, I'm actually a very dramatic person. So, I just like to consider my entire life a teen drama. But I will say, I think one of my most memorable dramatic moments was, again, I have a younger sibling as well. I was fighting with her, per usual. And I decided that I just need to get this energy out somewhere. And so I logged into my father's desktop that he had at the time. And I proceeded to film, over the course of a year, many video essays about how I just despise my sister and how she's taking away attention from me and how, because I'm older, I should be respected. So I think looking back on that is very dramatic, a little bit extra, I think.
And Dr. Bide?
I hate to disappoint, but I had a rather placid adolescence. But there were life events that brought in a lot of change. I lost my father rather early. And that was something I don't know that I've got over it even now. But it honed my sense of responsibility and also made me believe that I had bigger tasks in life with the family and otherwise. Joining a hostel soon after this life event, I got into medical college and joined a hostel, and that was freedom like I'd never known. And my mother was astounded when she was unpacking my bag to see cigarettes first, and then little packets of what looked like, tea. Those are interesting events in life. I must say that she handled the situation very, very graciously. I found her crying in the night, and she said, I didn't know you were in for this. I think I'm going to move to Bangalore and stay with you. My heart sank like it has never sunk since. So, but I'm very grateful. I'm the youngest of 3 siblings, very understanding family on the whole, a terrific father who unfortunately left us kind of young, a mother who believed that spare the rod and spoil the child was the dictum to go by. So there was a good balance between these two, and on the whole it was a pretty decent family to belong to. Rebellion came in the form of, wanting to go away, run away. Your narration reminds me of a story by Mortimer, which is said, a masculine protest. No boy has really grown up until he's run away from home. I also got into desperate situations when my first love failed. And that was a trauma relatively easy to overcome. But these are things that attend on many young people's lives, I discover, because my focal area of interest remains youth mental health.
Thank you so much. Let's get straight into it. We wanted to start off with the kinds of pressures young people are facing today are unprecedented. There's climate anxiety, there is scary world where we're going to have to coexist with AI. There's obviously the information overload, and then on top of that, there's, of course, school, which never goes away. So I just want to start with our young people. Arya, maybe you can go first. Just how do these societal factors impact you all? And like as a group, as an individual, what do you all talk about as when you're together?
So what we talk about in our peer groups?
Yeah.
Sure. I definitely think climate anxiety, of course, is something very real, something that I think we all face regardless of our generation. And information overload, though, that's something that my peer group talks a lot. And I personally explore in my own time. Because I don't think we realize just how much we know and how much of that we don't know, And so there's a lot of information that is incomplete, or we see on a reel this and then we go and quote it somewhere else and somebody will correct us or they won't correct us. And so that's something that we talk about a lot. We, of course, speak about generally anxiety. I think the one thing that is positive one of the things that is positive in my generation is that we're very aware of mental health, and we all speak about our anxieties and how we feel anxious, or if we're feeling sad that day. I won't say depression, but I will say emotions. We speak a lot about our emotions, and yeah, I think that's some of the things that we talk about.
So, me personally, I'd say I'm a very closed-off person from the rest of the world. Not in the sense that I'm necessarily overly introverted, but in the sense that my general knowledge of what's happening around me is like awful. So occasionally when I see a few news things on my Instagram, I tend to take it in more than I guess others would, because again, I don't see this stuff often, and it sometimes shocks me. So, for example, one time, I think there was a rape case in Kolkata, and my mom was out late, and it made me really nervous. So I messaged her to check if she was okay. That's about it.
And what about climate, like the end of the world as we know it?
Well,
is that something that comes into your mind space a lot? Do you all see it happening? There is so much kind of climate doom scrolling that happens. So, is that something that becomes a part of your life as well?
In a way, I guess. I mean, it's obviously something that we have to be concerned about, but it could kind of just end us, and then the world would kind of just like redo it on its own, and we'd all be okay. So like,
As long as we're all going.
yeah, as long as we're all gone.
Arya, you have anything to add to that? Then I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think we know a lot about what's happening now, which is good. I think that, yeah, honestly, same. I think it's okay. We should maybe stop consuming so much, so much fuel, so many clothes. But at the same time, I participate in that as well, so I can't really give any advice here. But I don't know. I think it's okay. I think it's okay if the world just burns up a little bit. It's good. We all need fresh starts. So I think it's time for something new. It's been a couple of millennia.
Every time I'm with young people, I feel the need to apologize on behalf of my generation.
Please do.
Yeah,
All generations.
I'm so sorry we messed this up.
Honestly, I don't know if I can accept this apology.
Yeah.
Some change. We need to see some action.
Okay. I'll send you a WhatsApp message every day. But over to Dr. Bede. What are you seeing as some of these broader themes in your work and coming into young people's lives, particularly since you work with so many young people?
I think a major change has been in the, I'll speak largely about the urban sector because we usually deal with that, and that's let me acknowledge, it's very unfair. Yeah. But at the same time, attitudes of parenting have changed a lot. In most families, we've shifted from, we used to have this pattern of do as I say, not as I do. So do as I do has now become quite common, and that's a very good change that has happened. But there are miserable families. There's no gainsaying that. We won't quote Leo Tolstoy's famous lines about that. But I think the other thing that's happening is that there's a lot more democracy in urban families these days. Young people can have their say. And in some families, they go to an extreme where young people are given much too much freedom, which they can't handle. And it's not fair to expect them to be able to handle it. And I think a judicious mix of freedom and as well as discipline is absolutely necessary. I became very unpopular with a school foundress headmistress because I said the school needs more discipline. Because she apparently grew up in a school where the discipline in Kolkata was very, very strict. When she founded the school, she decided there'd be absolutely no imposition of discipline. Troublesome children would be called up and told, could you please not disturb the class? It didn't work. And I was trying to point this out to her because she called me as an expert. Within a year, I was out. So I think our attitudes have changed generally for the better. But there are attendant problems that we cannot ignore. For example, with the expense account culture that crept in, the amount of alcoholism that was accruing grew so much. Children of alcoholics have had miserable lives. And it's been a tough job to deal with. For the young people, it's been very tough to deal with parents who have this kind of pathology. That has attended on many lives. Single-parent families have become much more common, not necessarily because of alcohol. That's a small contributory factor in that context. And single-parent families have their own burden. Children who are the only child of the family have another burden to carry. And I see that they're really overstressed on account of that. There are lots of other things, but I think we'll go along with...
And, one of the things that I'm sure Arya and Sachit would agree with me on this one is that young people get a lot of grief on screen time, right? Like how much screen time is being, how much time you're spending on devices, I suppose. Dr. Bede, are you seeing that play through also, like in a way that this excess of stimulus, how it's affecting young minds? What are you seeing there exactly?
Yeah, I get a lot of that, and there are hatash parents who would come and say that, iske baare mein kuch to kijiye. Children who spend much of their night on the telephone, my strict advice is that have a curfew time. Way back when we used to have curfews during the wars, you had a warning siren going out, after which all lights had to be off. So I say, with older kids, say Sachit's age, Arya's age, I'd say 10 o'clock is the time when you sound the warning siren, and at 10:30 all systems off. I try to get parents to insist. Sometimes I succeed. Keep the phone away. Keep it on the fridge, keep it in the showcase, keep it in some neutral place, because the child's fear is that my mother's going to read all my messages. It's a very understandable fear. So we need to have that sorry, it's a cliche now, but we have trust issues that must be addressed. The amount of time and energy, we speak about time, but also energy gets drained on account of the small screen is very debilitating, I'd say. And that's something that needs attention. What the children watch is something the parents must have a right to peep in and say, hello, what are you up to? Because there are so many misleading cues on the net that one has to be very, very careful about. And we're not talking only about pornography, though that is an important element.
I and Dr. Bida, I suspect you as well, a few years ahead, but we grew up in an age where the curfew was imposed by the state. We had only 2 TV channels, and TV was the digital drug of choice. And the programming was so boring that it was automatically like a deterrent to watch. But yeah, moving on, I think what I'd like to move into next is, we've had chats with both of you, and y'all have annoyingly supportive parents, if I were to say. So there's very little drama there, and actually a big hand for their parents. I can say this, that speaking to both of them, there's such the bit too sorted, if you might. But I want to come back to that, like in your life, and not just your parents. I feel like I want to talk about your peer group, other teachers that you work with. Just in your immediate circle, what one would say, how have those equations, how do those equations affect you on a daily basis? Your parents, your friends, your teachers, just some anecdotes around that.
Most of my friends are actually really chill. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be friends with them otherwise. So I have 2 friend groups mainly. They're both very different, and I wouldn't say they dislike each other, but I don't think they would get along well. And sometimes it's difficult to figure out which one to go to at what point. And sometimes it feels like I'm ditching one of them and going off with the other one. So I try to figure out at what times I do what with each one, and it's slightly difficult. Most of my teachers are actually really good. I'm really happy with my teachers this year. Again, I took subjects that I liked a lot. And I kind of knew which teachers taught which subjects, so I kind of expected it. They're all really supportive, and they've helped me a lot. My parents are, again, like Vikram sir, I don't know, Vikram said, are really supportive. I tell them pretty much everything, and they're always there for me, and I respect them a lot. They do a lot to help me and Sham go to school and just do the things we do and enjoy.
I think for me, I don't have to make appointments with my friend groups, but I will say that I definitely do understand the struggle of balancing different types of people at once and trying to figure out who to mesh with and who not and all of that. I think that just kind of comes with being a teenager. And also into adulthood, I'm sure you can't really mix all your friend groups, can you? But I think, I don't know. But yeah, I think for teachers, at least, I require teachers that I think are good for me. I think I've met people who are okay with whatever teacher they have as long as they teach the subject well. For me, I think I switched schools because I couldn't handle the way that my teachers were treating me or treating the people around me. And it's something that we don't speak about a lot, but these teachers, they're kind of like my second parents, right? I spend so much time in school, and they affect a lot of your mental health. If you don't have supportive teachers, then you're not going to be encouraged to do your subject, which is what happened to me with math. My 3rd grade math teacher to this day holds me back from getting 100%, I'm telling you. And obviously, it's not like I want an apology from her or anything, but I think, although I would appreciate it, I do think that if I had had a different teacher who had a different approach, who took me more seriously, I would maybe be at a different place now. And as for my parents, I have wonderful parents. They're great. My mom is staring at me from the audience, so I'm a little scared to say anything. But no, they're
Okay, we
great.
got your back.
Yeah, thank you. Guys, no, they're amazing. No, I have great parents. Just like Sachit, they're also very supportive. They allow my sister and I to do whatever we want with limits, within limits, of course. They're also your reward alarm. That's my mother's voice. At 9:45 p.m. every night, devices off, go to sleep. So I appreciate that. I think it's good. Oh, that's yes. She's great, guys. Great parenting. That's why I'm sitting here today. But yeah, that's...
Come on, give us some goss here. There must be
Man,
something.
you know, I think...
Like, where you're like, I hate my parents.
Oh, yeah. Let's think about this. They...
One thing
you know,
about them
you
that
know what I
annoys.
will say, though? They don't give me a lot of direction. And you say this, they're like, you do whatever you want. And I'm like, guys, I have exams. And they're like, yeah, okay, you study your exams. And I'm like, no. And I have friends whose their parents make their timetables for them. They like sit and they're like, can you do this now and show me the work? My parents don't do that, which means that I don't do that. And so I think I would love it if I could have my mom go every hour. Are you studying for your exam? Show me the work. But yeah, I think that's all. But they're great. They're amazing.
And thank you for sharing your math story.
Her
Come in.
narration just now reminded me of a Carole King song from my youth. It said, it's called Child of Mine, and it says, you don't need direction, you know which way to go. I don't want to hold you back, just want to watch you grow.
The only direction that I can read is at Google Maps, and that also is not so great.
No. So
But-
no, you mentioned that they don't give you direction, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
Lots of freedom. Too much, maybe.
But Dr. Bide, coming to you, I think I wanted you to come in on some of these. You spoke a little bit about parenting, but could you speak a little bit more about the impact teachers have, and is there something we could do? I know you spoke at a education panel this morning.
Yeah.
What are some of the things teachers can do?
Yeah, I think Arya brought it up very well. But you need teachers who can take on a subordinate parent role. And they are not parents. They cannot be your parents, but they should be people who give you a level of comfort where you can open up and talk about what's going on, particularly about the subject, but not only about the subject.
Yeah.
To be able to... A good teacher should be a good listener and a good counselor as well. And I think that's becoming increasingly common. I'm happy to note that there are lots of teachers who will give their students time to open up and talk about other stuff, not only the subject. But most important is if you there are too many teachers who are Marxist, Marx, that's all they will dwell on.
That's fine.
And we need to move away from that. And my observation is that we're considerably away from that today. But her being turned off from math, my daughter who was brilliant at math, because of one particular teacher, she will not look at anything numerical. She just does not want to handle it. So when she went into her post-graduation course, believing that there will be no math over there was mental math over there. She managed to clear it in spite of the math teacher who had been absolutely a tyrant. And I don't know, for some reason, it tends to be math teachers. And just the opposite are generally language teachers.
Yeah.
So I have a weakness for literature, and I find that English teachers or Hindi teachers for that matter, tend to be very accommodative, very understanding, and they will have the right quote, as I just did. So that helps a lot. But a teacher should also be something of a disciplinarian when things are going wrong. So it shouldn't be all softness, Yeah. So putting up a student for something going amiss, done judiciously, done not like a martinet, is what's called for.
Sorry, you spoke about how a lot of teachers nowadays are more liberal. I will say, though, I go to a school where I'm fortunate enough to have a majority of younger teachers. Something that I have noticed, and my peer group as well, and we have a little bit of a problem with this, is that some of these teachers have a serious lack of boundaries, in the sense that, of course, teachers, I want to be able to talk to you, and I suppose you can share back to some extent, but I have some teachers who share maybe too much, tell me too much about their life, and that's really dangerous, I feel, because I see a lot of students so I'm in 10th grade right now. I know people who are in 12th grade who are talking to their maybe 26-year-old teacher about their love life and stuff, which is fine. But at the same time, I just can't help but feel like, A, this teacher is not equipped to deal with this. B, they do not deserve to hear about your love life. And then the problem, I feel, really comes when the teacher starts talking about their personal life. And that's when all my friends and I are like, okay, we got to back out right now, because what happens when this adult who, because, when you're sharing with your teacher, something a lot of people I don't think remember, students especially, they still have power over you. They're still a figure of authority. So how do you balance that?
Dr. Bide, is that, I think I want you to come in on Arya's point, is, isolation is a big thing, even for adults, right? Like it is a massive, massive social isolation is a problem. You think that's manifesting in some way, like where teachers feel, they need a space to share as well?
The student is not the place to share.
Correct,
this.
I know.
Absolutely. You're very right about boundary. There are boundary crossings and there are boundary violations. Now, the student has a vehicle, we're talking about college students, and the teacher stuck in the rainstorm. The student offers a lift. There's nothing wrong with that, really. But opening up about one's personal life is something gross, is the only word I can use to describe it. Just not done. It reminded me a little, in a lighter vein, the book of my generation. The fiction was a novel called Catch-22. And the doctor over there is a guy called Doc Danica. And Doc Danica is the only guy handling a whole bunch of troops and officers, and he's tired of the burden on him. So he reaches a stage where anybody comes to him and says, Doc, I've got a bleeding nose. You think you got a problem? What about me? And he'll launch into describing his problem, and he becomes something of a parody of a doctor. And I think that's an extreme example, but that's what the teachers of the kind you mentioned need places to open up. And I think it's a good idea to have counselors in schools who will address not only students, but also teachers who have their hang-ups and their traumata.
And Sachit, I'll come to you because of your anecdote about two friend groups. How do misunderstandings get resolved, spoken about in these groups now that,
Like
is there a strategy?
Like the difference?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just gonna label them friend groups A and B. Friend group A is mainly guys, so we kind of handle it by not handling it entirely. We put it off until it's non-existent. The other friend group is mainly girls, so they kind of get upset at each other for a bit, and then they resolve it within 2 days, which is polar opposite. It's very different.
At least one thing hasn't changed. No, from my time to your time.
I feel like this is an insult on my gender. We can do conflict management too, okay? At least we manage it. Jesus. But wait, I have a question for Dr. Bide about this. Do you think that boys and girls nowadays have extremely polar opposite conflict management strategies?
Well, they make for good jokes, all right. But I don't think they're absolute polar opposites. Certainly there is an overlap which is bigger than the differences. But there are differences. And there's no point in pretending that both genders in every matter are equal.
Thank you. Let's come to something slightly more personal. Just how your own idea of self-image bring factors into your self-concept, your self-confidence, how you interact with the world. And, in our earlier conversations, you mentioned, Arya, that this has been something that you have felt strongly about. Maybe I get you to start it off, what you're seeing. And, again, start from a personal space. You can, of course, use other examples of things if you. But how do you see that and affecting your mental health, right?
I'm very happy to
the world has.
I'll have an opportunity to speak. But I think for self-image, this is, again, something that we spoke about briefly before. We live in an age, our generation, where everything is everywhere. I see everything on the internet. And for me personally, it has affected my self-image, as I'm sure it has everybody, obviously to different extents, but I'll speak about me. I will say the number one thing I see that I deal with is body image with social media. I think that because of the amount of content that we receive from apps like Instagram and Snapchat or whatever, a lot of people are very eager to show all sides of themselves, and you think that you're getting everything, but you're not. You're only getting what they choose to show to the world. And I think when you grow up around so many screens, you don't actually realize that this isn't reality. This is the social media. And for me personally, I think I have dealt with a lot of various issues, including what I should look like, what are the types of friends that I should have. I'm 16. Should I be going to a party? Should I not? And should I have a boyfriend now? All of these things that you see on the internet and you don't realize isn't true. That's what I would deal with a lot. And it took a lot to actually get out of it. But I think a big part of that was being in COVID and not being able to interact with actual people outside of my family. It was really hard because you don't have anyone to talk to about it. Everyone is so eager to present this idealistic image of themselves, how they want everyone else to see. You don't realize that this is not the truth.
And the consumption of content went up, right?
Exactly. And you're seeing, if this influencer looks amazing, okay, she has like this perfect body, this perfect life, so many amazing friends. She's wearing this dress. Is that what makes her so special? Should I go and buy this thing? And will that make me happy also? And so I think that obviously ties into overconsumption of material goods, but also of content. But yeah, so I think that's definitely a thing. And in my peer groups as well, we also talk about, family dynamics. A lot of, I don't know if anyone has seen this before, but there are a lot of family YouTube channels and all that go viral for obviously exploiting their children, but exploiting their children, but also for presenting this perfect image of what a family should look like. So we spoke about single parent families before. I have a lot of friends who are in single parent families, and they've spoken to me about how, they feel like, why does my family not look like this, And this perfect image of what we should all be and what we should all look like, it's not real. But dealing with that, it's very hard to see. And I think even guys, I don't know, I'm not a guy, but I'm sure you can attest to this to some extent. There's this huge pressure to go to the gym suddenly. Everybody is going to the gym. I like going to the gym, and I think it's great, workout, endorphins. But it's become this thing where if you don't go to the gym, then you're not cool anymore. If you don't have muscles, you're 16. You don't really need muscles. And I don't know, what do you have to say about that?
So a majority of my friends do actually go to the gym.
Same, that's what I'm saying.
I personally don't. I did during the summer vacation, but when school started, I just couldn't find the time. And I get home at 4:30 or 5 from school, and I have classes, I have tuitions, I play badminton, and I don't really want to go to the gym after I've eaten dinner. I feel like past that I get lazy and I just want to do nothing. Yeah. So
I actually wanted to ask you, because in our conversations you've mentioned that you're an avid gamer. I wanted to ask you, how does that you live so much time, you spend so much time in that virtual world, doing all the cool stuff that you're doing. But is there a place where there's transference? You think that, the two worlds kind of mix, the real world and that world, and is that something that you see?
I guess kind of, because, for example, I play a few multiplayer games, and a lot of them have voice chat, like Valorant, Overwatch, etc. And when you're talking to someone else, you know they're a real person, because occasionally, instead of giving call-outs, they'll make a terrible joke. Sometimes racist, sometimes not. So I guess it depends on what game you're playing and who you're playing with. Again, it's a massive world, right? The online world. So there are millions of people playing hundreds of different games, and based on their game preference, you can kind of figure out what kind of person they are.
That's good.
Okay, wait, what's your game preference? Now we'll figure out.
Any guesses?
I'm gonna say Valorant because I feel like everyone plays Valorant now. But
I recently got into Valorant. Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying it a bit. The people not so much.
Okay.
I'm gonna have Dr. Bide come in now. This is great.
No, that's okay.
Thanks.
God, tell me when to stop.
Dr. Bide, I wanted to take two themes.
The left made me feel very ignorant. The right made me feel illiterate.
I want to take out...
I can only think... I think most of you have seen this cartoon where a mother is very angry with her child who's continuously at the system and says, "Go on and play." He says, "Okay," and he goes out and he's taking the mouse outside, and from the window he's continuing to play his game. It's an old cartoon, but it drove home a point very much. I think exercise is tremendously important. It doesn't have to be gymming every day, but I think exercise is tremendously important. What you spoke about body image, that's an important concern. I mean, in adolescence, as your body is developing, your secondary sexual characters are coming up, some awakenings are there. It's very natural to be concerned with your physical appearance. But if that concern becomes a preoccupation altogether, then some intervention is necessary. Sometimes at the family level it suffices. Occasionally it needs the help of a professional. But most young people are going to be bothered about, hey, am I muscular enough? Am I too thin? Am I too bulky? These are very normal concerns. Is my nose too large? Now, the amount of concern there is about facial features is tremendous at this age, very understandable, needs repeated reassurance and sometimes even laughing it off within a family. It helps a lot. So we don't have to necessarily go to a shrink to have this sorted out, but if it's becoming deep-rooted, then some intervention is necessary.
And I wanted to Sachit's point, I wanted you to address this element of isolation that young people might be facing nowadays, just because there's so much time spent in a virtual world or virtual space.
Correct.
Then somehow that's more comforting or easier to be in some sense.
Very true. And I'm trotting out cliches today. So one, of course, well-known one is that there are people who have 4,000 friends on Insta or Facebook, but not one to whom they would really open up. Yeah. And I think we live in the age of loneliness, and this isolation is occurring more and more. But if you have at least two good friends you can open up to, and he's in an enviable position. No, not only that, he's Gopi Krishna also.
Yeah.
So, the wisdom of Lord Krishna may attend on your life, son. I think this isolation that we've been talking about is an important facet of today's life, and especially with kids who devote too much time to getting lost in an imaginary world. He's not, but there are lots of kids who cannot relate to the real world at all. Fortunately, they are a minority, but they're a minority who need special attention from the family. And
parents need to be mindful if that might be happening
Absolutely.
today.
And this happens very commonly when both parents are busy working outside the house, you know.
Just back to the young people, what kind of restorative practices do you all have, like routines that make you feel good, whether it's exercise?
Does Sachit want to go first for once?
Okay, sure. So again, I play video games. I try not to do it like as much as I used to, like during the pandemic, because since it was online school also then, me and my friends would kind of just like get on and play throughout classes, and we'd do like anything except the class. Apart from that, I play badminton, I play piano. I feel like it's good to have hobbies that excite you and that you enjoy. And that's about it.
I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by people who are into things outside of screens. So I don't have a lot of friends who are gamers, but I have a lot of friends who are into things like football or art or whatever. So that it's good to have, I think, external influences. You know, your difference in friend groups definitely makes me want to do more things. For me, I go to sleep. I think that, I can't lie to you, it's my most restorative practice just to take like nice rest. Yeah, full, like blinds closed, you know, fan on, nobody is allowed to disturb me. That's I think very restorative.
And are you seeing, both of you, that there is a greater awareness of mental health and mental hygiene for sure, and you
what
know,
is
just
mental hygiene?
meaning practices that keep positive mental health. Yeah, but the idea that, you know, on one of our previous conversations, you mentioned that, you know, there is a risk of knowing too much as well. Like, you know, like just this idea that young people today have the words and they kind of overuse it sometimes. They use it out of context. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Sure, of course. But I think what I was talking about earlier, to put it into a little bit differently, is that I was talking about how I find nowadays a lot of my friends, me included, use these clinical terms, medical words to describe behavior and action that I don't feel is the correct definition. You know, I see my friend, she'll be talking to some guy and then she'll call him a gaslighter or she'll call him manipulative. I also do this. But you don't realize that these words are maybe not supposed to be used in this context. And I think because, again, back to overconsumption and information overload, we see so much. We see Instagram therapists telling us that, oh, you know, if you see this behavior in a person, it equals trust issues. Stay away from, or even like zodiac signs. I see a lot of reels about, if you're a Libra man, then you are a red flag. And, you know, it's just fine, it's fun. I think that, but sometimes we take it maybe too seriously, or it gets to us. And when I'm speaking to my friend and they're venting, and obviously I'm a safe space, I would love to hear whatever they're saying, you get the urge to want to rationalize it, right? This person is behaving like this, I don't know why. Bro, it's because they have trust issues, stay away. Or, you know, maybe he's just a pathological liar. So those types of terms, you don't realize how harmful they are until you speak to a student of psychology or a doctor, and you realize that maybe I shouldn't say this. But that's just something that I think the only thing you can do to solve that problem is create awareness around the fact that these are terms used to diagnose someone. You can't call someone a narcissist like that. That's like, it's a mental disorder, no? Okay, like that's a mental disorder. You know, I can't call someone antisocial just because they don't want to go outside their house.
Be like Arya, ask a doctor.
Ask a doctor, type. See, I think the other good thing is that nowadays, I was at a panel before talking about digital mental health apps, you know. Now we have so much access to doctors. I can call a helpline, I can, maybe not WebMD, but, you know, look up actual websites with licensed professionals to talk about these things and see if what I'm saying makes sense. But I also think in this, if you want to rationalize how someone's behaving in medical terms to make it more official, get a therapist. More impressive, make it make sense. You know, like this person is behaving like this. Let's have a doctor tell me why they're behaving like this. Go to therapy. Because at least then you'll be solving some of your own issues also.
Thanks for bringing this up. I think two terms that are bandied about hell of a lot, they don't deserve to be. One is the one you mentioned, narcissistic. If somebody's been a little selfish, he gets labeled narcissistic. Narcissism is a much deeper pathology. And you ask me, and yes, there's something called NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, which has a lot more than just being selfish on an odd occasion or through one season it happened to be. And there could be logical, understandable explanations for that. The other term that is bandied about a lot is gaslighting.
Gaslight? What is it? Girl boss? Gaslight?
Gaslighting. Gaslighting is driving someone into believing they have a mental problem when in reality they don't have any mental issue at all. Mental health itself is bandied about much more wrongly than it should be. But I think we have to be very careful. You've made a very good point in using terms correctly and knowing what exactly they convey.
And I think that is something, again, for parents to watch out, right? If your young people are using these terms.
No, parents are also using these terms. That's
certainly
really
like
or I see my friends calling their parents those terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Sachit, anything you want to add to this?
So I think the at least the awareness aspect of mental health has become has improved a lot in my school, at least. Like they've done a bunch of, in my opinion, very boring sessions on it. Basically telling us to open up to the person sitting next to us about something random. And I'm always late to these sessions, so I end up sitting next to someone completely random that I've never talked to before. And I don't know what to tell them.
Can you say that? I don't know what to talk about. It's a fantastic icebreaker. You'd be surprised.
No, I'm just reflecting back as a teacher the number of times I've been guilty of that. So thank you. You just share with the person next to you. So yeah. But anyway, we'll open it up for audience questions. We are running towards the end of our session. We start here. Yeah.
Hi. Firstly, lovely, all the four of you. Really appreciate it. And I'm Pratiksha. I come from a community group called Mom Power 360. So there are mums, right, from baby boomers to the generation Alpha. Let's go one step ahead there. So till there. My question is to Arya. Arya, firstly, you were lovely. Firstly, can we have a round of applause for her? Yeah. So my question is to you. I just want to ask you now, I am raising a generation Alpha. One day she'll also be a teenager like you. So as a mother, I want to ask you, in this present times, I totally get it because I didn't come from the era of social media, reels, trends, etc. Oh my gosh, you are in that. I don't blame you. None of us blame you for that. It's already been made over there. But I would like to know from your personal aspect or even with regards to the peers around you, is there also a particular, a way where you look at things like you have seen a trend and would you ever not want to fall for it and say if you have a particular even more deeper mindset, would you ever even switch off from social media amidst this pressure?
Oh, I thank you for your question. That's so sweet. But I love switching off from social media. Highly encourage it. The Instagram deactivate button is my best friend. I think that my sister is Generation Alpha as well. She's 13. Insufferable. But I don't blame her. I'm going to say it's because of her computer and not her, just for grace purposes. But I will say that there are definitely times where I see a trend and I'm like, this is just not right. I don't know if anyone has heard about this, but there's this thing on the internet called hip dips. So this is essentially your pelvic bone being covered by skin and is not like full, right? So it's a trend to show that you don't have this bone, which is kind of impossible, right? So trends like that, where they ask you to change your anatomy to fit into whatever the current beauty standard is, those trends I would say are just so dangerous for kids because you don't realize, but like you're 11 and you're seeing what your body should look like is just so wrong. I can't give any parenting advice, don't have a child, but as a child who's being parented pretty good, I would say that I think the only way you can prevent this is by having obviously your own set of morals and values that you beat into your child. Don't actually beat them, but like make sure that they know, honesty, how to see what is real and what is fake, and make sure that your child is actually talking to you, because that's something that I used to struggle with, is that I would never talk to my parents about anything, so they never knew anything. But yeah, that, and make sure they don't have a screen. I would not give my child a screen. I'm sorry. Like iPad kids, I see them and I'm like, stop this, go outside and play. So do that, or just, I don't know, do whatever you're doing. I'm sure you have a great child.
Is there just one there and then we'll come to you?
Hi, thank you both, Sajid and Arya. Fascinating. We have a 12-year-old nephew and I am 29. So I'm like, same generation maybe? Not really, no. Everyone's. But I want to ask, just the panel overall, do you think it's ever possible to be, since I'm an aunt, be friends with my nephew? I feel like he's hiding stuff and I'm like, hey, tell me goss. I'll tell you goss in return. And it works sometimes, but sometimes he's like, if I tell you, then you'll say something. And I'm like, dude, I will, because I'm an aunt. So do you think it's ever possible? Like, how do I get so I need inside deets basically. How do I get my nephew to tell me more?
Dr. Bide, you want to go first? I think it ties in with the theme of teachers that
whenever I deal with parents and teachers groups, I emphasize this. Please be friendly with the young person. Don't be a friend. There is a definite difference between the two. So having an approach where they feel comfortable opening up to you, sometimes engage in violent reactions towards you, verbally violent, I'm saying, it's a good thing to have. But don't try to descend to their level and pretend that you are their age group. That can be very dangerous. It's almost regression, and many parents think they're doing their children a good turn by being friends, and they end up the whole family ends up in a mess on occasion. It's not very common, but it does happen.
I think the one point I'll make, very quick point, is I think young people sense safety very quickly. So the more safety there is in a space, they will share.
Okay, to that I just wanted to say something. So I just asked Dr. Bide if he's watched Gilmore Girls. I wonder, I'm sure all of you have at some point. I used to watch Gilmore Girls with my mom when I was much younger, and I always thought that the relationship that the mother and the child had was, idealistic. I want that. So I would force her to be my friend. She did not want to be my friend. To this day says, I am not your friend, I am your mother. And I'm very grateful for that, because I don't think you realize, at the age that I'm at, that it's actually very detrimental to be your child's friend. You have to be that authoritarian figure. And I think that whatever Lorelai was doing, bro, her child ended up the way that she did because of that, and I stand by that. So,
Sajid, anything you want to add?
So I feel like everyone already kind of said a lot, and I'm a little confused now on what to say. So, like they said, don't prop yourself up to be their friend. I feel like that ain't what you want to do. But you can still be like the fun, cool aunt that they talk to about things, joke about things. It'll work out.
So I'm going to crank this up a notch for you guys. I'm a mother of a 15 and a 10-year-old, so I get what you guys are saying. I get a different version of it because my child is also someone who is trying to be a professional athlete. So she's very focused, but there are a lot of parties that happen in the evenings for your age group that serve alcohol, and there are a fair bit of drugs going around as well. How do you guys say no? How do you deal with the situation? I know what my daughter does, but I also feel like the parents these days are allowing a lot of that sort of exposure for their children, which I don't condone. And how do you get that message across to parents? Do you guys have these discussions with your parents about parties in the evenings, sex, drugs, and rock and roll?
You can take the fifth. Answer on give your
So I personally don't go to a lot of these parties. I'm not the most social person, I guess, which is kind of funny because I said I have 2 friend groups. But so I'd say what's most important is that you trust your child and trust that they wouldn't, I'm assuming you know they're not doing it, and you trust them enough to know that they won't. And I guess that's all I got. If you don't want them going, just tell them and tell them the reason. And I think they should understand. And if they're not able to, you could always just kind of ground them.
okay, so that's a good question, and it's something that I find myself and my friend group dealing with right now. I will say though, definitely trust your child, because trust in the fact that you as a parent have done a good job and that they can make their own judgment, but also don't restrict them. I will say the reason I say that is not because don't encourage them to do drugs, but when you say no to someone, especially a teenager, they're going to go and do it. And you don't want them to sneak around under your watch. And I think that's probably what will hurt you most. But for saying no, as somebody who is a little bit more social, I do like to go out, I will say that saying no mainly just comes from the values system that I have, that my parents have instilled in me, to say that, this is not a safe, let's check some things, this is not a safe place. You don't know everybody here. You don't know what is in whatever you're drinking or eating or whatever. You don't know, is there a safe way for you to get home? If I decide to experiment, if I call my mom, will she come pick me up? Because I know my mom will, but will your child, So you got to tell them that, because you can't stop anyone from doing anything. If my mom told me not to do something and I went and did it anyway, she can't go back and reverse that. But what she can do is deal with the after effects of that. So if I decide to experiment and it goes wrong, I think the only thing you can do for your child is make sure that they know that regardless of whatever, you still have their back. That if they go and do this thing, that they can still call mama and mama will come pick me up, and it'll be fine and nothing is going to happen to me. Obviously, reprimand them. Please, shouldn't be doing things they're not allowed to do. But yeah, I would say that mainly. And also focus on your child's friends, because if the kids' friends happy to do all of this and don't realize that the effects of what they're doing, then that's going to encourage your child more. But also, your child is an athlete, so they're not going to do this. Yeah, and it's peer pressure, it happens. It's really scary because it's like, oh, my friends are drinking, should I also drink? No. But, I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do. But, yeah, also, if she's an athlete, then she knows what she has to do. You know, she's got her goal in mind, and that's the good thing. A lot of kids don't know, so they don't have any sort of direction, so they're going to do whatever they want. But I think you should have some faith in your child and the fact that you're probably a really good parent, so it'll be fine.
Dr. Bide, anything you want to?
Just I think much of what needed to be said has been covered, but I think it's important to use narration also. Stories of what has gone wrong with some kids, if you have them in, tell it in not with outrage and indignation, you know. Tell it very gently that these are the kind of outcomes that have happened for kids who went astray. So be careful about this. You know you don't want it. I don't want it in your life either. And if something like this happens, open up to me, talk to me about it.
Also, maybe your own stories.
I am mindful of time. We do have to. I know questions will be endless. I do apologize. Sahana, do we have time for one question? Let's ask the.
Yeah. So to Dr. Bide, and firstly, thank you all for the panel. And as what Arya mentioned about the body thing, so that has been through generations. It is not just because the social media stuff. So I want to understand from you, because in the Europe there were moms who had surrogate mothers. There was a trend wherein the nursing was done by the servants. So and in China there were instances of having their foot shot because they all wanted that. So how do you deal? The foot had to be of a certain size. So that has been a trend, irrespective of the social media thing that has come in now. So how has...
Concerns about body image and one's personal appearance have always been there, but it's much more today when the emphasis on physical beauty has gone up so tremendously. I think it's a bad trend on the whole. And then everyone wants to emulate the ideal, and that's hardly ever achieved. So this is something we have to be wary of. That's why I said if the preoccupation becomes deep-rooted, then it probably needs more than family intervention. But reassurance from the family still is absolutely mandatory, so to say. Okay.
So, Dr. Bide, if I could ask, your final kind of, because we are ending, one message to the teenagers and one message to the parents, perhaps.
Actually, I'm a young person.
Of course, that's why I said teenager and a parent.
I've only just crawled into my second childhood.
Of course.
So I think cherish your childhood, cherish your younger days. There are going to be memories that will stand you in good stead in the long run. Don't be scared of going off the beaten track. They talk about the road less traveled, but there are many roads less traveled, and choose yours, not necessarily with great caution to start with, but eventually, yes, great caution. So I go back to John Denver's song about, it's about, do you remember days, not so very long ago, when the world was ruled by people twice your size, and the stars were there for wishing, and the wind was there for kites, and when you grew tired, you could close your eyes. The song ends with these lines which say, now I see my son, he's playing with his toys, he's happy, and I give him all I can. But I can't help feeling just a little tingly inside when I hear him say he wants to be a man.
Once again, first of all, a big round of applause for Dr. Bide for wearing his expertise with such informality and joining the young people in his second childhood, as he said. And really, really big gratitude to you, sir. And can we really hear it for our young people who they really, really brought it. It's so difficult in a world where there's so much pressure to be this authentic and open. Thank you so much.